Hey everyone, Ted Wyman here at Bell MTS Place with Scott Billick. Another hockey season is upon us. The Winnipeg-Jets will open the season in New York on Thursday night, and they've had an awful lot of good news this week with the re-signings of Patrick Laine and Kyle Connor. A lot of the uncertainty that's been going on this offseason has been looked after just in the nick of time.
Yeah, I mean, to now have Kyle Connor and Patrick Laine, who are essentially, going to be in the lineup day one. I mean, it looks like that. I mean, Paul Maurice has kind of said, get a couple practices in, get a couple, get your legs under you, get your hands right, and you guys are going into the lineup, and so yeah, it's a huge addition to the Jets forward, especially with some of the questions on defense and that sort of thing. The Jets are going to probably have to sometimes outscore some of their problems, and to have two guys who put up 60 goals last year and have the potential to maybe even hit 80 combined, just depends on how things go. To get those guys back in lineup, to get these distractions out of the way that have been here through all of training camp. It's just it's hard to understate how important that was for the Jets to kind of sort that out, and especially with Dustin Byfuglien still kind of pondering his future.
Yeah, well, we did hear from Kevin Cheveldayoff today, and he talked a lot about how maybe it was almost expected in a way that it was going to take a long time, maybe not quite this long, but they knew it was going to be a long, protracted thing, and he was always of the belief that they were going to get it done. What they weren't expecting, I imagine, was the Dustin Byfuglien situation that you mentioned, where he is not with the team at the moment, reportedly pondering his future as an NHL player. A big question mark for the Jets, and I mean, obviously they've lost so much on defense already with the departures of Jacob Trouba and Tyler Myers and Ben Sherratt. Can this team survive without Dustin Byfuglien, and what do you think is going to happen there?
It's going to be tough. I mean, I think that's the one of the biggest challenges for this team coming into training camp was how were they going to deal with the bleeding that happened on the defense, especially on that right side, and then not to have Justin Byfuglien. Sami Niku's kind of knocked up right now after only spending roughly 2 skates on the ice for the Jets during training camp. He played in 1 game. The situation with him is unknown at this point whether he'll start. So yeah, it's tough. I mean, it's going to be a hard year to, there was a reason why they spent so much time on team defense in training camp, and part of it was just last season it wasn't great, and part of it is there's a young defensive core here now that the forwards are going to have to help out. I mean, everybody's got to kind of now play a part on doing this, and but what is interesting though is that they've lost Jacob Trouba, they might not have Dustin Byfuglien, Ben Sherratt, Tyler Myers are gone. It looks to me right now that Ville Heinola, the Jets' first-round pick, 20th overall, who came back in the Jacob Trouba trade, he was one piece of it, is going to start the year here, and he's had a tremendous training camp. I mean, as far as 18-year-old training camps go, I mean, Paul Maurice doesn't sometimes even have the words to kind of describe how well Ville Heinola has done to get in here and to make such an impact, where he's at now, we're 3 days from the regular season beginning, and he's on the roster and probably is going to get at least probably his 9 games in, and then go from there and see what actually happens. If he makes the team better, he's likely going to be on this team, might even be on this team for longer than those 9 games, and really going to depend on what happens with Dustin Byfuglien. But I've struggled all preseason to know if it is as bad as it seems, right? With the losses and that sort of thing, because there is skill with Sami Niku, with Tucker Poolman, with Ville Heinola. Nathan Beaulieu was a bit of a stalwart last year when Josh Morrissey was down. He came across. So it really just depends on the makeup here, and obviously having Dustin Byfuglien back would be huge for the team, but I'm not sure how much of a skill drop-off there'll be just yet. I want to see more. Want to see more of that Josh Morrissey, Neil Pionk partnership that we really only saw for 1 game yesterday or on Sunday against the Wild. Want to see more of that to see how that kind of plays out. So I wouldn't say I'm bullish on the defense, but I wouldn't say that I'm
maybe not as bad as people might think.
Yeah, I think that's kind of been my thought throughout the whole training camp is, I mean, there's been this young talent that has kind of been marinating in the minors and with the team at various times, and you're just trying to see now, can they kind of, come together and make it work?
Well, experience obviously means a lot, and that's something that they do have
Sure.
up front at least. You've
Yeah.
got a great amount of experience in Captain Blake Wheeler. You've got Mark Scheifele, Brian Little. We're not sure what his status is going to be for the start of the season because of an injury, but you still got guys like Matthew Perreault, Adam Lowry, Andrew Kopp, and even Patrick Laine going into a fourth season, and Kyle Connor. These are not rookie players anymore.
They're essentially
veterans, and so that's where this team has a strength. Obviously, we can look at that and say they should be okay there if they play good enough team defense. And another person you have to look at, and I think the jury is still a little bit out on, is goaltender Connor Hellebuck. He needs to have a bit of a bounce-back season after being a Vezina candidate 2 years ago.
Yeah, I think he's allowed 12 goals in his preseason starts. I think there was 3 preseason starts, if memory serves me correct. Last season where it wasn't where he wanted to be at. The season before that, obviously that Vezina caliber year. I mean, finished second to Pekka Rinne in Nashville. You want to see him, get back to that. He had above league average goaltending last year. They say that if you have above league average goaltending, you'll make the playoffs. Jets did make the playoffs, but and there was times where he was kind of hung out to dry. I mean, the team's defense wasn't great last year.
That part's got to be better. Or no goalie can be successful.
Exactly. I mean, there's very few goaltenders that thrive when the team's just letting your guy. And Connor Hellebuck as a starter, saw more shots than anybody 5-on-5. So, those have to come down for Connor Hellebuck to be done. I think this year you'll see though more of Laurent Brossoit. They know what they have in him now. They trust him. The team trusts him when he goes into the net. So there's that confidence there when your backup goes in, that he can go in and get a win, and the players don't have to. I think Paul Maurice said it best. Players sometimes would say if backup comes in, oh, it's just a loss, right? You kind of expect it. They don't expect that with Laurent Brossoit. They truly think that he can go in there and get them.
He did it last season.
He did, exactly, right? So yeah, it definitely. I think obviously Connor has to play better between the pipes, and we'll see how that goes. Is the jury still out? Yeah, I think a little bit. I mean, just after last season, you see one really good year, and then a year that a down year. So yeah, you're going to want to see more from him this season.
Well, it all gets started on Thursday night in New York. The Jets go to New Jersey after that, play on Long Island, and finish up in Pittsburgh. That is a tough road trip to start the season, but one that's certainly going to give us a pretty good sense of what this team has early on. For Scott Billick at Bell MTS Place, I'm Ted Wyman for the Winnipeg Sun.